From Bright Focus Foundation's Alzheimer's Disease Research Program, I'm Nancy Keach. Welcome to the 42nd episode of Zoom In on Dementia and Alzheimer's. This series is generously sponsored by Biogen, Eisai, Genentech, and Lilly, and we are very grateful to these sponsors for making these free programs possible for you guys. Today's program is an unusual one for us, Therapeutic TV for Alzheimer's, what the research shows. And I am delighted to introduce today's guest, Allyson Schrier, co-founder and president of Zinnia TV. Allyson was a caregiver for her husband who had dementia, and she turned that experience into a career focused on helping both people with cognitive impairment and those who care for them. Allyson is a member of the Washington State Dementia Action Collaborative and a founding member of Age Tech Seattle. Welcome, Allyson.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Great to have you. Allyson, you are only the second person in 3 years we've had on this program, on 42 of these programs, who is not a scientist or a doctor, but we're having you here because you created something really compelling and really practical and impactful, and you did the research needed to back it up. So briefly, today we're going to try to cover what is Zinnia TV and how and why did you create it? How is it different from regular TV? What is the research behind Zinnia? What does it cost? A lot of questions about that. How to use it and who it's for. The health benefits and risks of this type of TV versus regular TV. And accessibility, what to watch if you don't have cable, satellite, or streaming. First, I'm just going to ask you, before I get into everyone else's questions, what is Zinnia TV and how did you come to create it?
Thank you. Zinnia TV is a streaming service. So think about like Netflix or Hulu, but that is available on a monthly or an annual subscription. And it is the big difference is that the content has very intentionally been created to be digestible by and engaging for people who are living with dementia. And we'll talk more about what makes it that way. So it's a caregiving tool that caregivers will put on for a loved one with dementia, or people with earlier stages of dementia might choose to watch on their own for to derive the benefits that Zinnia affords them. And a little bit about how Zinnia came to be is that when my husband was living with dementia, I discovered that at some point as he was progressing, it became far more difficult for us to have any kind of meaningful conversation. And he was, by this point, living in a long-term care community, and I would stop by and visit him. And the conversations were just super transactional. I would talk about like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe the price of gas, or my kids were young when my husband was diagnosed. So well, the lineup to drop off the kids today, whatever it might be. And then, well, okay, see ya. It was great hanging out. But what I discovered is that if we had something visual that we were looking at together and we talked about the connection that we have with that thing, conversations became a lot more engaging. And this is very much in keeping with training that I had. My path led me to becoming a dementia educator along the way. I studied under Teepa Snow. And one of the things that she talked about was this concept of visual verbal touch. If I'm supporting a person who's living with dementia, I need to recognize that the ability to take things in visually lasts longer than some other things. It's a more compelling way to connect with a person. And so therefore, if I'm going to brush a person's hair, visual, I brush my own hair. Verbal, hey, let's brush hair. Touch, then I touch your hair. So knowing this, I thought, well, gosh, if we look at something, then that might actually enhance our ability to have conversation, and it worked. So my husband was a hockey player. I might bring in a hockey glove. I might bring in a puck. We might look at a hockey magazine. And so we might look at photographs. And then I discovered that on my iPhone, I was able to actually make little videos that used the content that was on my phone that were slow paced, easy for him to watch, and it would allow us to have conversations about the things that we were looking at. And it was a keen interest in trying to get more content on my phone so that I could make more of these little videos that led me to reach out to friends at Apple, which connected me with a fellow who was actually the designer of the product I was using on my iPhone, and he became my first business partner.
Okay. It's really interesting. Colleen wrote into the chat. I love this because my dad had vascular dementia and most TV upset him. He only liked Animal Planet and music. So cool. And that was a lot of the feedback that we got, and part of the reason why we really wanted to have you on. Larry from Jackson, New Hampshire wrote in, is there a scientific verification of the validity of this approach for helping people who have Alzheimer's? And Ranga from Orlando, Florida wrote, honestly speaking, what is the positive outcome so far from this research? A soul searching question, pardon me, which I thought was really sweet. So your website says that Zinnia is an evidence-based dementia care solution, and you've done research, I know, with University of British Columbia, Massachusetts eHealth Institute, the Brenda Stafford Foundation in Calgary, Canada, and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. So can you comment on some of this research? Because here you were, you have friends at Google, that's cool, but you're not a scientist. So how did
Yeah.
you sort of commission research to bring you to something that's been validated?
Sure. So I recognized really early on, like, who's going to believe me? I'm just like a lady who had a husband with dementia, and I found some stuff that helped him. So before we even had a product, I at that time was working at the University of Washington in their Memory and Brain Wellness Center, where I helped launch a program that was about education for doctors to become better equipped to detect and diagnose people living with dementia. And through that, I made connections at the University of British Columbia. When I had this concept, some of the earliest people I met with were my colleagues at the University of Washington to say, so you're a neurologist, you're a neuropsychologist, could you see a benefit in something like this? And it was them saying, definitely, that was the impetus for me to say, okay, I got to try this. So I reached out to those colleagues at UBC and talked about what we were trying to build. The first thing that we did once we got this research project going with them is we just made content. We didn't have a way to get the content out into the world. We just made content and we tested that content. So I had been testing the content. I'd go to the homes of people who were living with dementia. I'd go to long-term care communities, and it seemed like we were onto something. But through UBC, they had projects, research projects going, research they did conducted research both in long-term care settings and hospital settings at the Vancouver General Hospital, where they would show people the content that we were developing and they would watch what happened. And this research went on for a period of 2 years and resulted in 6 publications. And what they discovered were that the three main use cases for Zinnia were that in these research settings, it absolutely helped create connection and engagement, not just between the caregiver and the person living with dementia, but in long-term care settings between people with dementia, that they would talk with each other about what they were watching. They found that Zinnia helped reduce stress and agitation for the person who was living with dementia, in that they would show it to a person either to set a soothing tone or in the moment when agitation was starting to happen. They also found that the Zinnia videos helped them establish routine, them being the caregivers, helped establish routine and help with activities of daily living. And that's because we have videos like let's drink water, let's use the toilet, which are not meant to be instructional, like pick up the glass and bring it to your lips. It just shows people modeling the thing that we're about to do so that the person with dementia knows that it's safe, that it's accomplishable, and that it's potentially even enjoyable.
By the way, you're getting a lot of kudos in the chat here. This is Kristen. This is amazing. Kirsten, this is amazing. Thank you. And Carlos, we love Zinnia TV. Um, so people are already using this. And I think while I'm going to keep asking a little bit about research, but um, just so everyone knows, and we are going to get to cost and how you access it and so on, but um, maybe put Amanda or into the chat the Zinnia website, so you can go and poke around if you want on the website. And Also, they offer a free trial. So we're going to be getting to that in a minute. But Mary from Frederick, Maryland said, how is this research being funded, or how was this research funded? And what key strategies, say high level, can be gleaned and applied more widely?
Okay. And do you want me to go there?
Yeah, go there. Actually, well, let
Um,
me throw in first. Randall also wrote, has this technology been FDA cleared? So I'll let you address that with the whole research question.
sure. And no, Zinnia has not been FDA cleared. Um, the research that was done at UBC was funded. We were really lucky. There was a philanthropist in Canada who really liked what we were doing, and he donated money that allowed us, that was then matched by a Canadian governmental entity, and that's what funded the research at UBC. Other research, like the research in Massachusetts, was funded by a grant through the state of Massachusetts. We are currently doing research with Duke University, and that research has been funded through an NIH STTR grant.
That's funny. Carlos wrote, Zinnia TV is dad approved. Um, and I will point out that it wouldn't be an FDA, it's not a drug or a device, or any of those things. So it's not the type of thing that would have to be approved by the FDA. Um,
And
I
I
was
think I didn't answer the second half of the question, which you will need to remind me what it was.
sure. What key strategies can be gleaned and applied more widely from what you've learned doing this?
Okay, well, I mean, a key strategy is that we need to meet people who are living with dementia where they are, right? Take into account what works and what doesn't work and focus on what works. Recognize that we as the caregivers are the ones who set the tone. Recognize that we as the caregivers do have tools at our disposal and we need to know how to use them. I think that the whole approach of Zinnia, that it's gentle and that it is recognizes that there are times when all of us, frankly, behave like we're a person who's living with dementia, and so we need to be make things available to us all that help us settle and soothe.
It's interesting. I was going to go to the cost, but this is a was there were a lot of questions like this or comments like this. Lori wrote, the research about content makes sense. However, there is research about having your loved one with dementia watch TV versus other forms of engagement with a question mark, because I work with caregivers who worry that their loved one is watching too much TV, and that is of concern to them. And a lot of people were kind of like, how much TV is too much?
So first of all, I need to say I hate television. I hardly watch television because I have better things to do with my time. And I think that the argument in general that I have against people watching TV is watching, and even for people with healthy brains, right? Watching things that leave us feeling agitated, watching things that keep us from doing things like going for a walk, spending time with our loved ones, engaging in activities that are actually mentally stimulating. Nobody should be doing that. And a person living with dementia should never, ever be parked in front of a television all day long. Research has shown that the best way for a person with dementia to watch television is shoulder to shoulder with the person who is supporting them. It is meant to be used as a tool that starts to promote connection and conversation, that elevates the mood, that helps people feel better so that the rest of the day is more productive. Zinnia is not meant as a substitute for regular television. So what we think about with Zinnia is that the television or the tablet or whatever you're using is simply the tool through the box through which or the device through which the tool is being delivered. And just like you wouldn't sit and do puzzles all day long with a person with dementia, you wouldn't have them fold towels and socks all day long. They shouldn't watch Zinnia all day long. It should be used as needed to get the desired results.
I'm going to get a lot more deep into TV, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the difference between Zinnia. But let's get to the cost. So, what's the cost? And we're going to offer folks who are watching this program a discount, but it's a very affordable program. So, let me let you respond.
Yeah, so Zinnia is $69 a year, or you can do a monthly subscription, which is $9.99. And I need to say that this has been very intentional. We talked to people who are like, that's ridiculous. Like, I just got my Netflix bill and it was $19. And I hardly ever watch it, right? But my kids use it, so there you go. But I I was a caregiver. Like, I get that it is ridiculously expensive to support a family when there is dementia involved. There are so many new costs that you never would have anticipated. And so we don't feel that Zinnia should be a burden. And that's our goal, to have it be that Zinnia is something that's affordable. Our play is not to sell it for thousands of dollars and get 10 people to use it. It's to sell it for a very reasonable price and have lots and lots of people use it.
This is another reason I think this is great. And you can cancel any time if you're going on a monthly basis, correct?
Correct.
And there's other pricing for senior living and group settings. But we want to offer a code, Bright Focus 15. And if you use the code Bright Focus 15, you'll get 15% off, which would make a year subscription $59.54, which is less than $5 a month. So I also have to say, Allyson, thank you, because I find that
And can
extraordinary.
we clarify? I think that was Bright Focus all in caps.
Oh, yes. Okay. Bright Focus
And
all in caps.
that's only for the annual. So you'll have a choice of monthly or annual. We can only offer discounts on the annual subscription.
Okay, great. Um, okay, and Amanda put that in the chat. So if you're watching the chat, you can see it. Bright Focus all in caps 15. Yeah. So Jane asked, is this service appropriate for all stages of dementia or more appropriate for mild stages?
That is a great question. And I'll tell you, honestly, out of the gate, the goal was let's have something for people with like mid to late stage dementia because there's so little that seems to be available as the disease progresses. And certainly it's really helpful in those cases. I mean, I will tell you, the feedback that we get from people, like, I got my wife back, thank you, or wow, we didn't know mom could still talk, right? I mean, for people who are in later stages, it is why we keep doing this. But we also have people who have MCI or early stage dementia who use Zinnia for the same reason that caregivers use it for themselves, which is to soothe and settle. There's a couple that we have done quite a bit of work with, and she is one of those folks who, if you had a conversation with her, you'd be surprised to find that she has a dementia diagnosis. But she watches Zinnia with her husband to establish what she loves best now, so that when time comes when he needs to make a choice about what he'd like to have her watch, she's already vetted it. And I think that that's kind of cool.
Carrie Ann wrote, how does this work exactly? And is it an app you download on your phone or that you can find on your TV or question mark? And Margie wrote, I joined late. Do you use regular TV to show Zinnia? So can you talk practically about how you show it, how you
Yeah,
get it?
absolutely. Absolutely. So Zinnia is an app. And we have an app for iOS, for Android, for Apple TV, Amazon Fire. And so what that means is that if I have Roku, so if I have a Roku TV, the Zinnia app can be purchased and downloaded on the Roku TV. But if I had, for instance, an LG TV, there isn't an LG app. So that means that I would need to I like to be really candid about this. I'd need to get a Roku stick or an Amazon Fire, which is like 30 bucks. So when I say that it's really reasonable, you might need to spend an extra $30 to be able to get it on your TV. It works on iPads, it works on Android tablets. You just download the app. And when you pay for the subscription, you can use it on as many devices as you want. So we have cases where like mom spends half the week at one daughter's house and half the week at the other daughter's house. So they just share the subscription. Or we have it on our tablet so that when we go to the doctor's office or when we're sitting in the airport, we're able to watch Zinnia there, but we also play it on our TV at home.
And if you signed up and you were having trouble with it, is there like a help number?
Yeah, so there
Okay.
is, our videos are routed through Vimeo, and so there's tech support through Vimeo. And then I would say that some percentage of my time is just having personal conversations with people who have an issue, or like we need to cancel our subscription, mom passed away, right? And so we do a lot of personal interaction with people. I, for years, have been a dementia educator, and I feel like Zinnia is a great tool, but one of the greatest tools that caregivers can give themselves is an education about how best to take care of themselves and the people that they support. And so we created an education series. It's free. You don't need to be a Zinnia subscriber. We offer them once a month, and I am really excited about the stuff that we talk about. Like I try to create content that is not what I see every place else. So it's not me who's necessarily lecturing, although the next one I am. I'm going to be doing a session on May about intimacy and sexuality. But then we're having somebody who's going to be talking about anosognosia. We have a neurologist who's going to be talking about the myth of self-reliance. We have somebody who's coming in to talk about how do you take care of your own brain as a caregiver, and how do you build cognitive strength for the person that you support. Anyway, I'm excited by this. And again, they're free, they're an hour long. We get lots of great feedback from people.
That's fantastic. And it's funny, I'm sure people are like, oh, you're doing a an episode on sexuality, but we did the movie with Glenn Campbell and his family when Glenn had Alzheimer's, and we had such funny interviews with his wife Kim, because she would say that they would have relations, and a couple minutes later he would say, let's do it, and she would say, Glenn, we just did it. And he would, we took this out of the movie, but he would say, well, there's still more there to go. So there are things that are very common to Alzheimer's and other dementias regarding sexuality, that are good to talk about and good to share, because a lot of people are going through this and holding it back. So thank you for doing that. um,
Yes.
we have a lot of questions coming in. I'm going to ask this again because I think this is probably common. Do you have to have Wi-Fi? Can you pre-download programs like with Amazon Prime to be able to use it on an airplane?
And the answer is that yes, you can. So if you're traveling with a tablet or a laptop, you could run Zinnia, and then from within Zinnia, you can download videos, and then you can watch those when you don't have access to Wi-Fi.
So Fran is asking, do you have to be subscribed to Zinnia TV to have access to the upcoming educational webinars?
They're free to the world. You do not need to be a Zinnia subscriber.
Fantastic. Free to the world. And so are these Zooms. I'm very happy to say. I'm going to go back to some of my preloaded questions. And this is getting in the weeds, but this is what people want to know. Ellie from Lake Elmo, Minnesota. How close should these sit to the TV?
Yeah,
Do you have research on that?
well, I can tell you, so very early on when we were doing our testing, we were testing with a guy named Gary who had pretty advanced FTD. And what we discovered is that his family put him in front of a TV for periods of time each day. And we watched what happened when we moved the screen closer. So we had him watch, he watched TV, and he was just kind of looking around the room. You know, the TV's right over there. It's in the corner. It's probably 20 feet away, 10 feet away maybe. And he's looking around the room. And then we showed him a Zinnia video, and we put it right up close. And wow, he was transfixed. He watched that Zinnia video all the way through. He was enthralled. And so we thought, oh, well, there we go. There's the proof. Zinnia works better for him than regular TV. And then I said, wait a minute, what if we move the TV, like, so that it's also about 3 feet away? And he loved it. So it had to do with the fact that he couldn't see what he was watching. So I recommend, you have to try it a little, right? When my husband was at a point where he was no longer able to get out of bed, I would put videos for him on a thing that swiveled so he could lie and watch it. But I had to be really careful to make sure that it wasn't so close that it was fuzzing out. So you have to find that spot. But truly, people, like the science behind what people are able to see when they're living with dementia, their field of vision is really diminished, both in terms of like the field of vision and the distance. So you do need to bring it closer than you would expect.
And it actually sounds like it's good to test, to give them different options and see
It
what's going to
is.
engage them, because also at different stages. And by the way, you mentioned earlier that you were initially creating this for people who in moderate or later stages. And it's true, and we've talked about it on this program before. In the clinical trial world, there's almost nothing out of, over 100 clinical trials. There's almost nothing to address people's needs if they're in moderate to late stage. So it's another reason why this is, and more research, I think, in this area in terms of
Yeah.
how to use non-pharmacological interventions when people have agitation or just to engage them,
Yeah.
and to help the caregiver, is really great work. And you answered one of the questions that Ron, from Michigan, had asked: how does this work when the patient has vision problems? And you talked about that, so you can bring it really close or move it further away. What to do? This is from Kay. So Kay is asking what to do when a loved one has trouble using the TV remote, even turning it off and on.
D don't. I mean, right? There are products that are meant to be super easy remotes for people who are living with dementia. With Zinnia, we expect that it's the caregiver who is going to be, especially for mid to later stages, we expect that it's going to be the caregiver who is choosing what to watch with help, right? Because the way that Zinnia works, so somebody was asking whether it comes out like, is it all automatic? There are channels. So there's a nature channel, there's an animals channel, an interest channel. We have quizzes. We have something called Today in History, where you can actually watch like a little documentary of things that happened today in history, all slowed down so that they are accessible for a person with dementia. You can have the pick the channel and then have the thumbnails of the videos appear on the screen. I'm sorry, I do this as though I'm looking at it, but and then the person with dementia can pick what they want to watch, but we don't it can be really frustrating, as everybody knows, to have a person using a remote. We did have a guy, former friend of my husband's, who actually built a little interface for his dad to be able to use Zinnia on his tablet, where he would just go like this and pick videos. We have not turned that into a product, but I like the idea.
I like the idea too. Before we go to some discussion about regular TV, Jeff from Fort Myers, Florida wrote, how many hours a day is good for someone with Alzheimer's to watch television?
It's a great question, but it's kind of like asking there, because everybody's different, right? So I would say for as long as they are getting something out of it. So what do they get out of it? And how do you know that they're not getting something out of it? If they're looking around, if they're picking at their sweater, right? If they're trying to get out of their chair, they're probably not enjoying it anymore. We don't recommend, as I've already said, parking anybody all day. But recognize that one of the other benefits that we hear about a lot from caregivers is, oh my gosh, my mom loves the dog video so much that I'm able to take a shower. So Zinnia is also used by caregivers to create moments of respite. So I would never say like, well, we've actually done research and it's 1.6 hours. I don't have an answer for that. But think about for any don't think about it as a person with dementia. How long is it okay for anybody to sit in front of a television? And what could they otherwise be doing that they're not doing because they're stuck sitting in a chair?
Um, Jane asked, can we see a sample of Zinnia TV? And there is a free trial. You can go to the website, and you can see samples of Zinnia TV. Is Zinnia TV interactive? Can we select what to watch? And actually, I was going to ask later about the interactivity, because you've already said that this is something that you can do, that was designed to do together. And I think of that as interactive, that you can talk to each other and talk about what you're seeing as a caregiver and a loved one. Um, I also was wondering, like, is it interactive in the sense of like, are there programs that have chair exercise? Again, both for the person with cognitive issues and the caregiver. Is there that kind of interactivity? But this,
Yeah.
Heather is actually asking, can we select what we want to watch? Can we move around and
Okay,
select
so
different things?
yes, you select what you want to watch. Easy peasy. As far as interactivity, So, yes, we have chair exercises, we have yoga. The intention is we don't have a huge channel, right? I think if you like to do yoga, go watch like Yoga with Adrienne or something. But we like to have something enough for people to be able to do some interactivity together in that way. We also have meditations, but we created new content last year that is quiz content. So we don't have buttons that you like we don't it's not a touch screen. However, we created these quizzes that we've gotten lots of great feedback where the question appears on the screen along with an image. So, question on the screen and an image. The question is read aloud by a voice that says, what is the name of Tom Sawyer's best friend? Right? And then three options appear. And we slowly take away the wrong choices so that what's left is the right choice. So when we tested these in Massachusetts, we tested these quizzes both in assisted living and in memory care. In assisted living, people hated it, frankly. They were like, this is for babies. I can't stand this. But it's right. He's holding a fishing pole. The answer is fishing pole. In memory care, they loved it. The caregivers loved it because even though there might be caregivers who are less skilled at being able to engage people, like I would argue that every Zinnia video could drive an activity. Let's watch a gardening video together, pause, and say, "Whoa, what kind of peas are those?" Right? But these are videos. The quizzes are very explicitly able. They promote this kind of thinking, and also when somebody comes up with the answer, they feel so good about themselves. Like you can watch the dopamine hit when somebody's like, I got it right. So I'm really happy with that content.
That is awesome. So I'm going to pivot, but I will be going back and forth to some questions about regular TV. Clifford from Baltimore asked, for Alzheimer's patients with MCI or early dementia who cannot access Zinnia, what TV do you recommend? My father loved watching classic films on TCM, Turner Cable, I guess, Turner
Yep.
Classic Movies, as he declined. And then Margie in the chat wrote, my husband only watches shows like Andy Griffith, Columbo, etc., but won't watch educational or nature or music shows for some reason. And how was any different? You talked about that, but we got a lot of questions. Some were like, my loved one will only watch nature shows. My
Mhm.
loved one will only watch, older shows that remind them of the past. Or so there were um, different questions. And I guess I'll just jump ahead and say there were also a lot of questions. Sorry, I'm throwing this all at you at once about violent TV and what kinds of TV are dangerous.
Sure.
Even using those words. So sorry,
Okay.
that's a lot, but
Nope. I'm going to launch into that. Okay. So I was a presenter at a conference at the Michigan Assisted Living Association. And the topic was low tech and no tech solutions for people who are living with dementia. I led the panel. Okay. There were a panel of 7 people. The audience was people like all of us, right? People who are caregivers, professional or family caregivers. The panelists all had dementia. And so I asked the question, so what do you all like to watch on TV these days? And all but one of them had the same answer, which was, oh, I don't watch TV anymore. I mean, it's happening so fast and I can't keep track of it. And it makes me feel bad because I know I should be able to, like healthy me was. So it just sort of like exacerbates this like fact that I'm declining. I can't follow the plot. I can't remember which character did what. It creates chaos inside of me. And so if I walk into a room and the TV is on, I turn it off. If somebody turns on the TV, I leave. So bear in mind, these were people who were able to get themselves to Michigan to sit on a panel and have meaningful conversation. So it's reckoned that by the time a person, before they even have a diagnosis, they may be missing 1 in every 3 words that's being spoken because of just processing speed issues. So therefore, when TV is moving along and it's talking at a regular pace, like I can't follow what's happening even with early dementia. So I just want to understand that, right? And so this was also one of my compelling reasons for wanting to create this is I would walk into the room where my husband was parked in a wheelchair in front of a television watching Turner Broadcasting or something, and he might be like this, or he might be going like this, or he might be screaming out swear words. Why? Well, because he was having the same experience these people are having. It is chaos inside my body, but I don't have the ability to get up and turn off the TV. I don't have language anymore. I can't say, excuse me, this is bothering me. Could somebody please turn it off? Now, but yet, right, some of you have said, yeah, but my sweetheart loves watching Turner movies or loves watching old shows. That's great. I've been in care communities where every day they play exactly the same episode of The Price is Right. And everybody loves it. They laugh at the right times. They shout out words because they're used to it. There's familiarity. It feels good. It might feel really good for your loved one to still watch reruns of the Donna Reed show. Then I think keep watching reruns of the Donna Reed show. That's great. If it becomes a problem, like I was doing a lecture and a woman said, my mom loves Gunsmoke, but lately she's been very upset whenever there's a gun. And I'm like, it's Gunsmoke, right? There are going to be guns. So if mom gets upset when somebody shoots a gun, it's probably time to stop watching Gunsmoke. Or maybe turn off the volume and put music on instead if it's the visuals that she finds really stimulating. So I think it's on us as caregivers to pay attention. What's working and what's not working. It's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person because you let your dad watch Pink Panther cartoons. If they make him laugh and they lighten the mood and he's happy afterwards, great. Watch for agitation. So what we might find is that somebody watches a show. Like I find if I watch a show before I go to bed where there's a lot of action and violence, I can't sleep because I'm churned up inside. Well, gosh, that happens to people with dementia too. That's a big issue with the news. It's a big issue with watching action shows that they used to love, and now they get upset when you turn it off, but then when the show is over, they're upset. Well, so maybe you don't watch it. There's going to be upset anyway. Maybe you could encourage them to watch something different. I went on and on. Sorry about that.
No, no, not at all. And I think the one of the main points I think that we're on is that obviously people are different, and they have different stages. So what they liked when they were in the earlier mild stage may not be something they can tolerate as they progress. And I've seen that my mother, I talk about this sometimes, is 96, and she used to love, certain things, and she would ask me to put on older movies. And now I'm finding even the older movies, even some like it hot, she's not really following it anymore. But she loves the Wheel of Fortune. Wheel of Fortune, she'll be shouting out the answer. So it is somewhat personal, but also experiment, keep trying different things, and they're going to have to change with time in different stages. Since I'm on my family, I'm going to go to a question that came in from my cousin, Harlan in Seattle, Washington, that I find very interesting. Does watching any kind of programming for over a certain time period dull our minds and contribute to reducing brain function, thus contributing to dementia development? And if so, what is the time period?
So first of all, hi Harlan in Seattle. I'm Allison in Seattle. So you might be in the house next door for all I know. Um, I am not a scientist or a doctor who has researched extensively the effects of TV on a healthy brain. From everything that I have read, limiting time in front of a TV has less to do with the fact that you're watching TV and more to do with the fact that you are sitting, having a sedentary experience that is causing you to not only not be active, but also not be social. So if we look at the things that we would do to promote brain health, sitting and watching television isn't on the list. So if you're going to watch a little bit of TV to help you relax before bedtime or kill a little bit of time between appointments, that's great. But nobody should be sitting and watching TV for hours and hours all day. And we all know that lots of people do it.
And A wrote, I would think sedentary lifestyle and constant watching TV adds to further memory loss. My father, after retiring, just stays on the recliner and watches TV for 8 to 9 hours a day. Seems like it's adding to his cognitive decline. Is this the same for Zinnia?
I wouldn't have anybody recline for 8 to 9 hours a day watching anything. So I can't say that Zinnia programming. I don't know if I want to go there. I don't think that the content is the thing that's really the problem there. I think that it's the sedentary, because if you put on like Zinnia, we have a bees video that goes for like an hour and a half. And we had a team meeting one time and we were like, let's put a Zinnia video on while we're having our meeting. And what we find out is after 20 minutes, we're all like, we're just watching the bees, right? So that's not allowing us to be productive. So I don't know if I've answered the question, but I don't do that.
I think you have. And Joy did ask a really interesting question. Joy wrote, I'm in the early stages. Do social media sites like Facebook help? I enjoy being connected with friends worldwide.
Be connected with friends worldwide. And if you're doing that through a screen, make sure that you're giving yourself lots of breaks to get up and stretch, drink water, go outside. But I think that there are a lot of reasons why I don't like social media sites. And we all know about that, right? How many people, right, walk into any airport, right, or get on a bus? How many people are just like scrolling through social media stuff? So probably not the most productive way to spend lots of time. But Joy, it sounds like you are using it as it should be used as a tool to promote connection and engagement. So yay you.
Yeah, and we know that social interaction is one of several interventions that actually scientifically are shown to have a difference on your brain health and your cognitive condition and decline. So that's important. I'm going to come back now to the news because I think that I was really fascinated that there were several people who wrote in about the news. Jane from Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania said, my husband gets obsessed with the news. Is this harmful? And Davy from Starkville, Mississippi said, what are the effects of continuous cable news? I can tell you from my own self, not good. Eileen from Ewing Township, New Jersey, is it safe to assume that news programs can cause more agitation and potential behavioral concerns for those experiencing dementia, especially as it progresses? Do you want to
So
comment?
yeah, I definitely can. So and then I'll tell you about my dream. So we know that there can be a situation for people living with dementia where they confuse fact and fiction. So, countless stories that I know of people who mom was watching TV and then there was a fire and suddenly my mom, like on the TV, they were showing a fire and my mom started screaming like the house is on fire, the house is on fire, right? Or in my own family, when my stepdad, who had vascular dementia, on an anniversary of 9/11, was watching TV and he went running in and he shook my mother awake and he said, Kathleen, Kathleen, we need to leave. Terrible things are happening in New York. So is that a problem? Yeah, sure. So I also know that for many, many people, news is a routine. Like that's the way that they've always been an educated person, an involved person. That's how they stay engaged with the world. News is a part of their routine. So it's really hard to take away that routine. I don't have an easy answer, which is like, so what do you substitute for the news? And so now I'll switch to my dream. I would love to have the funding and the team to be able to build a dementia-friendly news channel. And the way that I picture this is that there are anchor people who are in their blazers sitting at a desk and like, hi, Jane, how's it going? It's going great, Dan, thanks. Boy, we've got some news today. Do you know that the average dog can, right, wags his tail 32 times a minute or whatever it is, so that it's presented like the news, but the news is benign. And then you switch to a weather station where somebody says, thanks, yeah, now to the weather. Boy, oh boy, I'm going to tell you a bit about tornadoes or whatever it is, so that the person gets like you're scratching that itch of watching the news, but it's a news show that would not cause a person to become agitated. Of course, it would need to be tested, but this is my dream, is that we can create something like that.
I think that's actually really interesting, and and I'm sure a lot of scientists and people will trivialize some of these discussions, but with the massive amount of people who are at home with their loved one with various stages and various types of dementia. This is really, in some ways, I mean, this is something that's now and practical to do. So I find this really fascinating. Um, I'm going to just read a couple from the chat here. Randy, I find that music, including music stations, are very good for my sister. Soothes, calms, makes her happy. She remembers, sings songs. There's a lot of research we know about music and the brain and dementia. We were just in a research study on music and dementia, which is looking at this, which will be coming out. And that these are fantastic. I know the Neuro Arts Blueprint is a project that Renee Fleming is involved with, where there's a lot of work being done on how the arts and music can affect one's brain. Do you want to say anything about that, Allison?
I do. I want to just let everybody know that we do have a sing-along channel on Zinnia where we have a number of different artists who are perhaps playing guitar, they're singing. We have made sure that the words appear at the bottom of the screen for people who like to be able to follow along. We have found that especially in long-term care settings, sometimes the person with dementia remembers the words, but the care staff don't. So this gives them an opportunity to follow along as well. There is irrefutable evidence that music is healthy for the brain, not just for people who are living with dementia, but I think that probably many people in this room have had the experience of she can't talk, but she can still sing. She can't walk, but she can still dance. There is just that part of those parts of the brain that are stimulated by music in powerful ways, which is why with Zinnia, the videos are set to music. They're set to music, they're set to sound effects, because it is really hard for the brain with dementia to process audio that's coming in and dialogue that's coming in and visuals that are coming in at the same time.
Barbara wrote, I have a friend who lives with MCI. She often doesn't sit to watch her Zinnia, but enjoys having it on as she
Yeah.
goes about her daily activities. She also appreciates that she can adjust the volume and speed that it plays. There are so many wonderful short and longer videos. Wonderful. You have a ringer in there, Allison. Um,
Yes.
but
Your
that's
check is in
okay.
the mail.
Yeah, really. Thank you, Barbara. Um, I wanted to, just Beverly wrote, that's a very good idea. My mother listens to quote news, but really only the weather and over again. So your research clearly shows in what you're putting forward. Before I get to a couple of other things, you touched on long-term care.
Mhm.
And this product is available to long-term care settings. Peggy from Greenboro, North Carolina wrote, "How can caregivers find out about Zinnia TV? Any marketing strategies created on Zinnia for long-term care facilities?"
Well, that's a great question. I mean, certainly as a feisty startup, which is what we are, we're always looking for ways to get the word out. And how do they find out about us? I wish I could answer that succinctly. We have tried different marketing strategies. It's something that we think about all the time. We're always looking for opportunities. Word of mouth is probably one of the best ways that people find out about Zinnia. We hear from family caregivers all the time who found out about it from somebody in their support group, for instance. And in long-term care, we go to conferences where we know that there will be long-term care folk there. Sometimes the best way that we get into long-term care communities is we get into one and we prove out that it works really well in that one, and then it proliferates throughout that entity.
I'm gonna have two fun stories. One was yeah, this was back to the news. Noreen, my husband is diagnosed with MCI, obsessed with watching cable news or live patrol cop shows. So are most people without dementia. His attention span for movies and other shows is poor. My theory is that the repetitive nature of the shows is not boring due to the loss of short-term memory. Do you have any observations? Does it have to do with the that you don't really remember that you just saw something like that a few minutes ago?
Yeah, it could definitely be. I think that if it continues to be compelling, right? If whatever I thought was compelling is going to be compelling again, when I see it, which is like the people I talked about who watch the same episode of The Price is Right every day. And part of that is because there is that familiarity, like, ooh, I know this. I know this. And it feels really good to know something. It feels really good to anticipate something and have it actually happen. So I can see why that might be successful.
And a similar one from Kay, my former Navy pilot husband likes action but can't follow a plot.
Yeah.
Documentaries have narrators droning on, which is boring for him. Any suggestions on what programs might have action without being necessary to follow a plot? And then in parentheses, football is perfect, but he knows when it's not football season.
Oh, I don't know. Have you tried watching recordings of football games? There's a
Uh,
guy I know who is a former NFL player, and that's all he watches is football. He just loves it. And so even though it's not football season, to be able to say, "Oh my gosh, I was hearing from some people about how this particular game that took place was so amazing. I want to watch it with you because maybe you can explain to me what's going on. Find a way to make it compelling." I think sports are good. Another thing, you know what, watching recordings of bands, if your person was into music, is into music, because that's sort of like you're able to watch the instruments being played. It's active, but there's music going on. So that's another thing that I've heard from people. I also love explore.org. Do you guys know that one?
I don't.
Explore.org is so cool. It's free and it is cameras all over the world that are watching things happen. So it's like a camera that's on an eagle's nest, or a camera that's watching bears in Alaska, or a camera that's watching. A lot of it is nature stuff. And people really love that. And some of those are pretty active, like you're watching animals run or whatever.
And Margie, goodbye. And yes, I'm going to say that this is being recorded. This will be this whole program, along with all of the resources mentioned, will be emailed to everyone who registered for the Zoom. So not to worry if you've missed part. Um, Judy, a couple people I think have asked, can we order this through Jubilee TV? This is what we use at my parent. So I don't know what Jubilee TV is. So do you know, Allison?
I do, and
Uh,
we're just doing a kind of a rollout thing with promotion with Jubilee TV. So Jubilee TV is, I think, just an amazing product, and the way that it works is that at my mom's house there's a TV, and the TV has a box on it. I drive that TV with my iPhone, so it allows me to determine what is going to play on my mom's TV. And there's a camera so we can have video conversations. And if I need to just check in and look through her TV, I can do that. So I love Jubilee TV. And yes, there are people who have a Jubilee TV box and they have a Roku coming out the back of the Jubilee TV box, which is how they take in Zinnia TV. So people absolutely will make it so that in the morning, they play the sunrise video or the good morning video to help establish time of day. Maybe 4 times a day, they play the let's drink water video and mom goes and gets herself a glass of water. Maybe at 8 o'clock at night, they play the good night video to help mom start to wind down. And maybe in the afternoon, mom is crazy about sewing, so they play a sewing video to help just kind of bring her some ease. So absolutely, those two go together very well.
and we're at time. These hours go by so quickly, but I just want to say to the audience who's still on, I know there's still a couple hundred people on, that as most of you know who watch this Zoom in on dementia and Alzheimer's, we don't usually talk about caregiving, products, services, research, but if you've liked this and want us to continue looking for things like this that are scientifically backed and very practical, I guess put a yes or a check in the chat or a thumbs up, because I personally think it's very valuable, but we also focus mostly on research and science. Oh, people are writing in yes already, so please let us know. And let's just go to the closing slides, Mason. As we close, I want to thank uh, my wonderful colleagues on the Bright Focus team, Dr. Sharon Rossi, um, producers Amanda Russell and Alexa Villarreal, the team at M Squared, and especially Allison, Bill Uniowski, who's on, and the Zinnia team for sharing the information about Zinnia with us. Allison, you've taken your experience with an incredibly challenging disease and you made a well-researched, tangible, real-world contribution to Alzheimer's care. And I think that's really awesome. And we all want to thank you for that. So on the screen now, you're seeing how has Alzheimer's affected you? If you are willing to share your story with us, would you please write it in to brightfocus.org /alz story, ALZ story. We would really love to be able to talk with you and share your stories. Or you can contact us at reply@brightfocus.org. Next slide, please. If you asked questions that weren't answered today, like the first question that came in, what's the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia? There are 41 additional episodes to this one. And so I'm sure that whatever questions you have are probably covered in one of these. They're all free. They're all on our website at brightfocus.org /zoom in. Next slide, please. On this next slide, you'll see that Zinnia TV is www.zinniatv.com. And again, use the code BrightFocus15 to get 15% off of an annual membership, which would give you this program for less than $5 a month. And then we also have a lot of additional free resources from Bright Focus, including the infographic on all the drugs that have been approved for use in Alzheimer's by the FDA. Those are both symptomatic, disease modifying, and for agitation and later stage symptoms. We have a lot of free resources with a lot of information. So please feel free to access these. The link will be sent to you. We'll be sending out a recording and a transcript of this episode to all of you in about a week or so. That will include all the resources discussed today. And finally, next slide. If this program would be helpful to you, Allison talked about word of mouth. Same for us. Please share the link to the Zoom in with at least 3 friends. brightfocus.org /zoom in. Finally, I think this is now finally, really finally, last slide. Yes, we're very grateful you're participating. And next month, it's actually coming up pretty soon on Thursday, May 7th. It's in honor of Stroke Awareness Month. We have Dr. Jason Hinman from UCLA on. He'll be talking about stroke, vascular dementia, Alzheimer's, what's the difference, but really the relationship of heart health and brain health, which is really critical. We hope you'll come join us on May 7th. And if you can take the slide down, Allison, again, thank you so much. Really appreciate having you here. And as you further develop your technology, and I have a feeling you may go on to do additional technologies, will you come back and talk with us about those?
You betcha. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our time together.
My pleasure. And as all of you know, I like to end by saying, we're glad you're here. Thank you for participating. You are not alone. Wherever you are in the country, whatever little town, you're not alone. We're here for you. And life is very, very short. So hi, Mom, who's 96. Tell everyone you love them. Tell everyone you love how much you love them. Give them a hug. And keep them close while you can. So thanks again to everyone who joined us, especially to Allison. I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Be well.